In the face of right-wing fear-mongering about abortion, it's always best to come prepared with facts. Por ejemplo, during yesterday's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that centered on abortion bans and the implications for interstate travel, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, who proudly touts an A rating from the Susan B. Anthony list, failed spectacularly when he tried to push the ridiculous Republican talking point that late-term abortions are a common occurrence. Let's roll the tape.
My example's not unrealistic. If your answer is going to be that never happens, let me go to Ms. Fry. What do you think?
Well, Senator, first of all, if you don't ask a question if you don't want to know the answer. And I think 1%, but I'm saying to you, Senator, 1% of abortions happen at 21 weeks or later. So I think the premise of your question sets up a conversation about abortion that is unfair. It is rarely is that ever the instance. And I understand your point, Senator. I understand your point. But with all due respect, I also think the chances of people sort of getting all the way through a pregnancy and just sort of saying, I don't want it, is disrespectful to women.
Bloop. I mean, don't ask a question if you don't want to know the answer, Senator Kennedy. Yesterday's hearing preceded today's Supreme Court decision rejecting a bid to restrict access to the abortion pill mifepristone. Joining me now is Jocelyn Fry, the president of the National Partnership for Women and Families, and Leah Littman, law professor at the University of Michigan Law School and co-host of the Strict Scrutiny podcast. Thank you both for being here. Jocelyn Fry, let me start with you on this because you gave that brilliant answer, but it is insulting and stupid because the idea that women go all the way through a 9-month pregnancy and then like at 8 weeks and 28 days go, you know what? I don't think I want a baby. That's dumb. Why do Republicans keep saying it?
Well, first of all, Joanne, thank you for having me. I think the reason that they do it is because they're trying to stigmatize people who are trying to seek abortions. And so they frame the conversation in the most extreme way possible, in ways that we know don't really happen, in a way so that they look reasonable when they try to push back on abortion. It simply doesn't happen that way. And it was important to say that because it really paints a picture that is disrespectful to women and anybody who's seeking an abortion.
Yeah, I mean, Leah Littman, if someone loses a baby at that stage, I mean, I know people, I have friends who've had pregnancies that, were trying to end themselves early, like trying to actually, people were very, very premature. And, that's a crisis for a woman. If something happens and you're not at full term and you start to, maybe go into labor, people go on 5 months of bed rest to make sure they have it is insane. But I have heard this talking point repeated. Liz Cheney used to say it. They'll say it over and over again, that Democrats want abortion up until birth. Trump says it. And so this has gone into the zeitgeist, and I think it's insulting specifically to women who have pregnancies that are in crisis, because that's what we're talking about when you're even saying you have to have a procedure other than delivery at that point.
I think that that's exactly right. And they're doing that in part to minimize the fact that these abortion bans are wreaking utter terror and havoc on women throughout their pregnancies. We've all heard the story about Amanda Zurawski and many of the other plaintiffs in the case challenging the Texas abortion ban who were forced into emergency situations where they came within, minutes or days of death because they went into septic shock after they were denied an abortion care. And so what all of these stories are designed to do are designed to detract from the reality of these abortion bans. Abortion is a medical procedure, and when it is used later in a pregnancy, it is oftentimes because there are medical complications. It might be that something was detected, such as the fetus is no longer compatible with life. It might be that a woman develops a, catastrophic medical conditions such that she is no longer able to carry the pregnancy. These are all real situations that have arisen when these abortion bans were allowed to go into effect. And it's actually another issue that the court is going to decide this term, whether states can actually prohibit abortions and prohibit hospitals from denying abortions in cases that are necessary to save the life, health, bodily organs, and bodily functions of pregnant women.
Yeah, I mean, Jocelyn Frye, this is essentially going to be a case that decides, do women have to be near death and bleeding out before they can get an abortion? And it seems that all that people like Samuel Alito care about are the feelings and the religious beliefs of people who oppose abortion. And they're saying if they're inconvenienced in any way by having to be in the same room or in the same hospital as somebody getting an abortion, that has to take priority over literally women's life and death.
Well, I think that's exactly right, and it's the problem. What I focused on yesterday, what Senator Whitehouse, I think, wanted to raise in that hearing, was that we need to refocus our attention on the people who really matter, the women and people seeking abortion and who need access to quality care. And the problem with that case that's pending before the Supreme Court is it does exactly the opposite. It puts these decisions in the hands of politicians and, quite frankly, has them sort of poking their heads in spaces where they ought not to be. In crisis situations, you want medical professionals who are able to make quick decisions, the right decisions, and maximize their focus on the health and well-being of that patient and nothing else.
And Leah, what happens if the Comstock Act starts to be enforced? What kind of paint me the picture of what America looks like under an actively enforced Comstock Act?
It's a terrifying picture. That's an 1873 Victorian-era law that some pro-life groups, anti-abortion groups are arguing is effectively a nationwide abortion ban that is secretly on the books and could be revivified by some future Republican administration, again, basically like a zombie law. And so what that would mean is if some future Republican president or attorney general enforced the Comstock Act, they would be arguing that it is a federal crime punishable by imprison to distribute the medication abortion drug. They have also argued that it would be a federal crime under the Comstock Act to deliver devices that are used in procedural abortion. So what they would be doing, in effect, is saying there's a nationwide abortion ban on the books without Congress having to pass one.
And Jocelyn Frye, the other piece is that, I remember when the first IVF procedures were created, and the reaction of evangelical Christians was to say it was a demonic abomination. They still think that. The Southern Baptist Convention has said it should be banned. And so that's what we're living under. People want a theocracy, and they want their religious beliefs enforced by law.
Well, I think, one of the troubling things is that we have unfortunately, a very narrow understanding of the perspectives of people of faith. There are lots of people of faith who support abortion access, who believe that these decisions ought to be left to patients and their healthcare providers. And it's unfortunate that the narrative that dominates is these very extreme views that really ignore the health and well-being and the care of women and families.
Indeed, I'm one of them. And red letter Christians exist and also have rights as well and should not be ordered around by the Christians who don't read the things that are written in red in the Bible. Jocelyn Frye and Leah Lippman, thank you both very much.